Hello, everybody, and hello, Abdel. Thank you so much for joining me. Super, super, super excited to talk to you. So, Abdel is one of our awesome platform engineering ambassadors, probably the one I stalk the most on LinkedIn. I think I read every single post you've ever put out. You're an international traveler, platform engineering expert. It's got some great, great blogs and webinars on our community blog and community YouTube as well. You once didn't let me call you an AI expert, so I won't call you an AI expert, but I will say you're someone I really love to read what you're talking about and doing in the AI space. And as we see basically across the entire community, this massive explosion in both downloads of reports, of new people coming in, anyone who's been listening to this for a while or reading us knows that's not because there's suddenly a new 50,000 DevOps people changing their titles. It's because of all of these new domains that are starting to think about platform engineering. I wasn't talking to FinOps people 2 years ago, and now every day I am. And especially when we look into the world of AI, that has completely reshaped a lot of how we're talking about platform engineering, how we're thinking about platform engineering. And I really feel like there's no better person to talk to than you, Abdel. So for those who don't know, Abdel hosts the Kubernetes podcast and can I call you a Kubernetes expert? Am I allowed to call you that?
I think so, yes. That's one I would say yes for.
Perfect. And when we did our State of Platform Engineering survey, basically every year, we of course ask, what is your main area of focus? And year over year, it was 70% Kubernetes, 80% Kubernetes. Now, for the first time, it dropped down to 44%. And it's a huge drop. It's a drop by half. Is that because people are not using Kubernetes? No, of course not. It's because more and more people who are calling themselves platform engineers or thinking about platform engineers in different ways than they were a couple of years ago. And I'm really curious about how Kubernetes is maybe changing or thinking about this new frontier or these new potential disciplines, new potential personas who are kind of stepping into this platform landscape.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember back in 2003, the legendary Kelsey Hightower published this tweet, which was basically around the lines of the future of Kubernetes is that it will become a part of the platform. It will become just an abstraction layer that you don't have to think about. It's just there, right? Obviously, this comes after a few years where Earth had this massive tweet, I think, post to LinkedIn, which was Kubernetes is the new operating system of the cloud, as in Linux was the operating system of servers. And it sort of felt at the time when Kelsey tweeted that Kubernetes will fade away, but then in a way, AI brought it back into the picture. And I'm not surprised about the drop in the people reporting that they identify as platform engineers, because it feels to me like when you are saying I'm a platform engineer, you're implicitly saying I'm using Kubernetes, right? Because the question, and I know that a lot of people might disagree with this, because a lot of people might say, oh, not every platform is based on Kubernetes. And the question back to people is like, so what else? If it's not Kubernetes, where are you running? You're running either on a server or on a container, right? Like there are probably people doing just functions as a service. So completely serverless, completely function based, which is very possible. And a lot of platforms and a lot of architectures are, but at some point you need a backend service somewhere. And that backend needs to run in a container or a VM, right? So I'm not very surprised about this. It sounds reasonable that going forward, when we hear platform, we should just assume that there is a Kubernetes component somewhere there.
And that's an interesting way to think about it, because when I kind of delve into some and talk to some of those people, and I'm saying, okay, so why have you answered this way? I like to sometimes reach out and get a little delve into some of it, and so much of it was because they were using Kubernetes. It just wasn't their main focus, or it wasn't the main part of the platform anymore. And I think that idea of Kubernetes really becoming the kind of just the default layer. It's the, for lack of a better word, it's the OS where you don't even think about it being there. Yeah. Of course, Kubernetes is part of the platform. My main focus is on FinOps. of course, beneath the layer of the platform is it has Kubernetes within there. And I think that is an interesting kind of change that we're seeing across a lot of the platform engineering landscape. So I'd love to just, take a little bit left field and zoom really onto the Kubernetes side of things, because I know Kubernetes and AI is a big topic. I'm really curious to talk a bit more about Crow for some people who haven't seen your webinar yet. And I'd love to kind of just get your spark notes on how Kubernetes is kind of adapting to this new AI world and what you guys are thinking about.
Yeah. So the project, generally speaking, I think has a massive shift toward not focusing, but making Kubernetes support AI workload better. Over the last 2 years, there have been, so for those of you who doesn't know, Kubernetes is organized into, Kubernetes as in the project and the community, the maintainers, are organized into what we call SIGs, special interest groups. So these are the people working on specific areas. So that would be networking, security, node, upgrades, control plane, blah, blah, blah. And then there is this thing called working groups, which are cross-functional focus groups. And last year there was 2 working groups that was created. One was called devices. And so working group devices was working on anything that has to deal with accelerators. So GPUs, TPUs, etc. Right? And then the other working group was called serving or inference, which is a working group having to work with anything that has to do with deploy large language models on Kubernetes. And so those kind of cross-functional working groups, they are talking to all the SIGs and they're coordinating across all the SIGs to sort of make Kubernetes support large language models better. Because, like, to be very honest, large language models is the main challenge. Like everything else, like agentic AI and everything else, just like an application inside a pod. And so these groups are getting kind of lot more attention and a lot more traction within the project itself. And some of the stuff that came out of these working groups over the last couple of years is the device plugin, obviously, which is better support for accelerators. There is this new API that came out called, it didn't came out technically 2 years ago. It existed for a while, but it was re-architected. It's called DRA, Dynamic Resource Allocation. So you can think about it as the way for your workload to be deployed on Kubernetes and to just declare, to say or advertise to the platform, I am this workload, I need this kind of capabilities, I need this kind of GPUs in a dynamic way. So you don't really need to specifically have to provision the cluster in a certain way before you support the workloads. The workload kind of define the shape of the cluster, right? And DRA is actually one of the APIs that I'm very excited about because if you really look into the details of it, the capabilities of DRA goes beyond just AI workloads. It has impacts across multiple other use cases. And so this is kind of the direction in which the project is going. So it is like the way I like to think about it is that there is the core of Kubernetes, which is not changing much. So the core being the architecture that everybody knows, the way Kubernetes work, the way we deploy workloads and all this stuff. And there is this extra component that are added that are specifically designed to support AI workloads better. So that's kind of the shift happening within the projects.
I'm curious about some of the potential cultural elements of this. When we talk about platform engineering, obviously there's the technical side. At the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is tech, but the really big differentiator point within, say, platform engineering is that kind of cultural way of thinking. And, as we kind of step into more of an AI future, more of personas, I'm curious how that kind of product manager thinking, internal product management, the new types of people who need to be thinking about Kubernetes, does that go into, I have been talking to product managers for years. None of them have ever talked to me before about, now I'm having to learn Kubernetes stuff because it was too much of a black box and it wasn't relevant to them at all. Now, more frequently, I'm hearing, hey, I've started doing some Kubernetes courses. I'm curious, maybe for a bit of a behind the scenes thing, how this kind of response to new people needing to use Kubernetes, the explosion and the different personas that Kubernetes is relevant to, and how that's kind of shaping things.
Yeah, before we jumped on the call, I was doing some reading and I was doing a little bit of reflection on this in the sense that, like, one of the reflections I had is one of the things that AI is doing is definitely defining new personas in our industry that goes beyond, I'm a developer. I'm a machine learning engineer, data scientist, blah, blah, blah. So it's like one question I'm trying to answer is, so let's say you are a developer, but you are building agents, which a big component of building an agent is software engineering. You're writing code, right? And then you are integrated with large language models. So what do we call you? Are you an AI developer? Are you an AI software engineer? So I think that to your question, if you are a product manager within the platform engineering space, you have to sort of be ready to more and more personas that blend the boundaries of the old roles that we used to have. So personas that integrate both a software engineering component, which a software engineer cares about ease of deployment, observability, scalability, etc., and then a little bit of an AI component, which is now I have to have my app integrate with an AI, right? With a large language model. I just use the terms as they should be. Not AI is kind of generic. Like I want to call a large language model from my application. So what does that mean for the platform itself? That certainly means security. That means guardrails. That means extra capabilities that you probably never had to think about before, right? From the top of my head, one example I can give, which is I've been playing with this over the last couple of weeks. Like I'm a software engineer. I have an app that needs to call a large language model. I need some sort of guardrails about the prompts that I'm sending to that large language model. I need to be able to filter those prompts both on input and output, right? So you're not going to do that in the app because you can't absolutely imagine every single prompt that a user might write. So there are a couple of large language models that are specifically designed to be prompt filters, like Llama Firewall is a very popular one, right? And so then the question becomes this specific model that is acting as a guardrail between your application, technically your user, but let's say your model, who is responsible for that? Who deploys it? Who defines its configuration? Is it part of the platform? Which to me feels natural because it should be a capability. It should be like the same way that when I'm a developer, I need to deploy an app and I need a database. Now I need to integrate with a large language model. I need a guardrail around that, right? Like it's just very simple. These are like very simple use cases, but I feel like they're still kind of ambiguous in the way that like it's still not defined. Like we have spent a very long time in our industry defining what the role of software engineer is, what the role of DevOps is, what the role of a machine learning engineer is, but those new role blending all these boundaries are still kind of in the fly. And so I think if you're a product manager, you should be expecting going forward that you will have to basically work horizontally and vertically, in the sense that vertically you will have to dive into the platform to understand how it works, because you are going to be asked to provide more capabilities than you probably have been asked before. And that requires you understanding, like for me, from my perspective, some of the best product managers I work with in Google are the ones who are very technical, the ones who really, really understand how things work. They might not be the best software engineers. They are not going to be producing the best code around, but they do know what they're talking about. So I think going forward, there will be an expectation actually of product managers to really, really know their stuff, right?
Yeah, I think absolutely. As we kind of move in that direction, I want to zoom in on some of the maybe advice for not necessarily product managers, but for anyone else who's kind of watching this, looking at the space. We tend to have a more senior audience, but I think especially with you being here, we'll have a lot of people who are looking for some advice, and maybe we can get some good clips on people who are really right now very worried about maybe just graduating, coming into the industry, especially junior roles, thinking about their types of roles. We have quite a large course ecosystem. We have a Kubernetes course. So we do get reached out to with lots of people being like, hey, is it even worth me taking a Kubernetes course now? Is Kubernetes will Kubernetes still exist, in 5 years with AI? That one is pretty easy for me to answer even. But I would be curious on your perspective on some of these, and then some advice you would have for maybe a new grad or for a junior person who's looking at roles and kind of is a bit unsure about our world.
Yeah, I think I would be probably aligned with you in the sense that Kubernetes is here to stay. It's not going to disappear for sure, right? So, so one of the best keynotes I have seen last year is during one of conferences where the keynote speaker had this slide saying something around the lines that since code is becoming a commodity, and so large language models are able to generate code. Creativity is the new currency. So how creative you are as a developer is the new currency. And I know that people can take this, like creativity is a very bloated word, which means a lot of things for a lot of people. But specifically for software engineering, what it means literally is, to me at least, is how good and effective you are at using the tools that you have today at your disposal to build more stuff, to be better, to be more productive, right? And so whether you are a senior engineer or a junior, I think both can benefit from just learning to adopt and to leverage AI to do more things. And there are a few tips that I explicitly give, like very explicit tips that I give, which is use AI to do the things that most developers don't want to do. Like write tests, write documentation, this stuff, no one wants to do that. Write emails, put your notes about what you've been doing into an AI that can give you some stuff to read during your stand-up. You know, this, like, no one likes stand-ups. I don't like them certainly, but like, if you struggle to express what you've been working on, what you're stuck with, just ask an AI to just like, hey, here is the things I've been doing. Give me a summary for like a 2-minute stand-up, right? I was just saying, like, this probably might sound stupid to a lot of people, but it could be useful. But specifically for junior engineers, I think learning how to leverage AI is a must, I would say. Regardless of whether a developer, data scientist, machine learning engineer, or even a Kubernetes or wannabe Kubernetes expert, I would say. I find myself using kubectl AI quite a lot, which is like a kubectl command line with an AI behind it that allows you to debug a cluster, debug workloads, figure out why your cluster is broken, where stuff is not working, etc. And then I think that there is still, I believe that there is still a value in being very good at the fundamentals of any platform that you're working on. It doesn't matter what it is, or any framework, whether it's like Kubernetes or Spring Boot, it doesn't really matter. Like, you have to really understand the core of those systems, how they work. Because the reality is, even if you are using a large language model to generate code or to generate debugging steps or whatever you're using to generate your generative from AI, if you really don't understand it, you're not going to be able to use it, right? So there was this thread going on Twitter a couple of days ago. I think you've probably seen it. There was like this huge explosion on Twitter about the fact that Linus Torvalds came out saying, like, I'm vibe coding a Python visualization tool for an audio plugin for the Linux kernel. And everybody was like, oh yeah, Linus Torvalds is vibe coding. I'm like, yeah, he has 45 years of coding experience behind, right? So even if he is vibe coding, he's vibe coding probably better than most of us because he really knows what he's doing, right? And back to the point I started with creativity. One of the points of creativity is actually becoming more like an orchestra conductor, in the sense that you have these AI agents and these AI tools, and you are conducting them with the prompts. And the prompt is the creative part. And that's where a senior versus a junior will be different. Because as a junior, you don't necessarily know what you are going to ask the AI to do. And your prompts are not going to be as effective or as good as somebody who have experience. And that's why I say you have to know how to leverage these tools, because that's how you build experience, literally. Like, it's the same thing that before AI, like we told people you have to write code to understand how to read code, right? So now you have to write prompts to understand how to write better prompts, right? So it's for me, it sounds very simple, but I know that it's quite challenging for a lot of people. And I think I will address a point, I think, which kind of is between the line of what you said. I don't think that I think that the industry is shifting for sure. I am for once very optimistic for this shift, because I think we're going toward the future where we have more tools at our disposal that allows us to do more, better, faster, more efficient things. And we just need to live with that and learn how to use it, essentially.
I agree with you 100%, basically. And I think oftentimes a lot of the AI advice, I wrote our state of AI and platform engineering report. So when I was at some of our conferences, I would have someone kind of finger wagging a bit at me and be like, okay, well, tell me something useful I can do with AI. It's all useless. And I was like, you can write that email, so you don't have to write it yourself. Yes. And it's like, it's a small thing. And it's like, well, what do you struggle with as an engineer? And it's like, well, I'm really good at the code, that kind of code-based thinking almost, thinking along those lines. But maybe as a platform engineer, I need to try and figure out how to articulate this thing that we have built, this new feature, into value for my executive. My executive does not care at all about our lead time, doesn't even know what lead time means. So how do I communicate it? Well, put it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT and tell it, I'm talking to my executive. He doesn't know doesn't know any of these words. How do I translate this into stuff he'll understand? And, just like you said, we need to be thinking about AI in these terms. And if you are a junior person who's worried about what is going to happen, the best thing you can do is just learn. Just keep learning, keep doing stuff, because Kubernetes isn't going anywhere. The fundamental layers are not going anywhere. Thinking about things like a product and thinking about the users of your platform as customers, that's not going anywhere. One thing that I am really curious about as well, based on seeing your I can't imagine how many countries you go to in a year, but I had a really fascinating conversation with one of our platform engineering ambassadors from Egypt about platform engineering, and where she revealed how mature the platform engineering conversations she was having. She would be like, she was shocked when she would come back to where she lives in Italy and how far behind they were. And her idea was that so many of these quite advanced IT people in Egypt that she was working with had leapfrogged. And I'm curious about your perspective. You've been to quite a few different countries all around Europe, the world, and you're quite embedded in a lot of these IT communities. I'm curious about your perspective of global platform engineering maturity, AI maturity, and how different parts of the world are really thinking about some of these things.
Yeah, it certainly varies. I'm not surprised about Egypt. I have always considered Egypt in North Africa as one of the leading IT countries, simply because just the sheer size of the country means that they do actually have quite a lot of unicorns. They have quite a lot of equivalent companies or copycats of companies that we have in Europe. Like there is an Uber Eats version, and there is like an Uber version, and there is these copies of those, but like local companies, right? And they are following what these big companies are doing, and they're like kind of following the trends, and they're very advanced compared to, like, for example, I'm from Morocco, so when I go to Morocco, it's a little bit less mature. I'm still having conversations at the Kubernetes level, so we're still like one layer down. And there is also a little bit this in Morocco specifically. There's also a little bit this culture of like buy versus build. So people might like they might as well just buy a platform instead of just building it themselves, right? But like to answer your question, like globally, I think it varies per country. And it's also, it varies per sector. So if you're talking to like digital natives or startups, like the maturity level is very high, right? And we see it in KubeCon. Like when we go to KubeCon, when you're talking about the big companies, the unicorns, the digital natives, it's quite advanced. And then when you're talking to your like traditional banks and financial institutions and governments, it's a little bit behind. There are a few exceptions. One surprising example that you're probably aware of is Norway. There is quite a lot of there are a lot of a lot of actually government entities in Norway who are very advanced. Like NAV is, Hans Christian and the team there are doing some super advanced stuff in the platform engineering space. But that has to do with the culture and the way their government is organized, and the fact that these agencies are independent and they're like using publicly available open source project to build stuff instead of, they have like a little bit less bureaucracy, I would say. So the engineers are kind of free to do whatever they want, right? And so across all the countries I travel to, I think in Europe the maturity level varies a little bit. I have to say that generally speaking, the norther you go, the more mature things are. The UK is always an exception, but like the norther you go, the more mature things are a little bit. And then also Eastern Europe is quite surprising. Like the level of maturity there around platform engineering is very high, and that's also is explainable by the fact there is a lot of European unicorns coming from Poland and the Balkans and the Baltic countries and all these locations. So yeah, it varies. I feel like the example, like the thing that I'm thinking about right now is really KubeCon. Like when I'm at KubeCon, I'm having conversations at all levels, everything from like, how do you do kubectl get pods again? like the lower level to like people talking about, platform engineering at a very high level. So, which to me, like this is exciting in the sense that it means there are opportunities really, right? If you think about it, it just means that like the lack of maturity means that there is opportunities everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I always look to some of the data from the State of Platform Engineering report. So we, I think you and I get to attend lots of conferences. We get to talk to lots of people. So we're able to break through that bubble. But a lot of people I know who work at this space and are kind of at the level of platform maturity that you and I are, end up talking to lots of people who are also very mature in the platform space and in the AI
There's
space.
a confirmation bias a bit.
They're like, whoa, the industry is where everyone is so advanced. And it's like, no. So when we, we ask a series of questions in that survey along the lines of the CNCF platform maturity model. And we've done it each year now. And still, I would say it's around around 40% of people we're like, if we're saying a score of like 100 is like fully perfect, fully mature and everything, we're at around like a 40, basically, on average, up from like 38 last year. So there are these marginal improvements in things, and that's really what you want to see. But overwhelmingly, there's still lots of learning to be had. There's still lots of growth to have. And I think I would tie that point into our previous topic for junior people listening. There is still so much still to build. There's still so much still to learn. And the opportunities are really gigantic at the moment. I want to kind of take this moment to pick your brain a little bit on what you're thinking about in terms of the future. I think it was a buzzword 7 months ago, agentic platform. Now it is not a buzzword. Now agentic platform is totally normal, and that's all anyone I talk to seems to want to talk about. And I'm curious on your view of what the rest of 2026 looks like in this space, and maybe even a little bit on the 2027.
Yeah. I have my kind of secret way of thinking about it, which is, I'm going to give you the secret here. It's when people think about agentic AI, I just think about it's an application that talks to large language models. It's basically what it is, right? Like that's it. There isn't anything unique about an agent. It's just an app inside the container that talks to a large language model. That's it, right? So if you think about a full stack app as a front end, back end database, just remove database and put an LLM, and that's it. So fundamentally, the problems that people are going to be facing this year and next year are the same we've been facing over the last few years, and the same questions about how do we auto scale, secure, and all these things. But having said that, I think that there are few opportunities or few projects I'm super excited about in the Kubernetes / platform engineering space. One of the recent ones is this agent sandbox that was open source last year, which is securing or giving you a sandbox environment in which an agent generates and runs code. So in case your agent goes rogue, it doesn't like impact your platform essentially. It's one of them. And then everything that has to do with agent gateway or any sort of gateway for large language models and for agents. These are two of the biggest things that are going to be the main topics that I'm working on in 2026. So these are, again, back to the point I started with. These are like components that have been designed specifically to solve very specific problems that are to agents. Because when you run an agent on Kubernetes, it's basically 80% what an regular application challenges are. And then there is this like very, very specific security, scalability, networking challenges that you have to deal with, right? And so I wrote that article last year about agentic AI on Kubernetes on the platform engineering blog, which took me a lot of time to actually think and reflect and do research about it. And over that the learning from that article have been this like, yeah, it is 80% all the stuff that we're doing already with Kubernetes, and there is this like 20% of very specific core have. The other thing I would say probably to add to that is the newly built Agentic AI Foundation under the Linux Foundation that now has MCP and agent-to-agent protocols and ACP and all these agentic standards. That's also super exciting. We'll see what the future of that looks like. But I think these three main topics are basically the core, I think, of what agentic AI in Kubernetes is going to be kind of hovering around. So gateways, anything to do with gateways, sandbox for security, and everything to do with security, and then everything that has to do with agentic protocols, MCP, A2A, ACP, and all the subsequent challenges around security and authentication, authorization, blah, blah, blah. So, and I think this probably will also take us into 2027 because realistically, a lot of these technologies are not very mature yet, and they're going to be maturing over 2026, and they're going to change and shift, and and people are going to adopt them and then wipe it and then adopt new one. So there's a lot of exciting things happening, and I think these three are probably the things I'm looking at the most.
Amazing. And I would really emphasize for anyone here listening to go find that article and read it. It's a bit of a behemoth, so I'm not surprised hearing that you said it, you took a bit of time to really think about it. I remember, I think when you first shared it with me, it was like 7 p.m. on a Friday or something. And I was at dinner reading it, like at dinner with my wife, reading it on my phone. I was like, oh my God. So it's
so much in that article.
It's a wonderful read. So thank you so much, Abdel, for joining. And I think this will be super, super helpful for anyone who is listening and a little bit worried. Usually I don't ask about where people can find you, but I know you have so many awesome things out there that are worth sharing. And I'd love to get a sense from where people can go and hear more from you.
Well, I finally have a blog now. It's called abdel.dev, literally. And in it, you will find all my blogs and then all the links to my social media. So it's just abdel.dev, and yeah, you'll find everything there.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Abdel.
Awesome.
And thanks everybody for watching. See you next time.
Cheers.